You guys thought I forgot about Old World Wednesday, didn't you? Well, I didn't. Unfortunately, I just had to put my 1000th video thing on the 1000th video, which had to be Wednesday. Which means that the Old World video did get pushed to today, which is Thursday. 1 day's grace, I think, is allowed. And like I promised you guys last week, I'm going to be finishing off the Vampire Dragon model by painting the actual vampire on top. As you can see, he is now done beautifully, and they're all glued together as one solid and cohesive piece. I'm really pleased with it. Like I said, I attached it to the correct shaped base for this model, which is a rectangle on a 100 by 150 millimeter base, which is the correct size for it to be used in games of Warhammer the Old World. And yeah, I'm really excited to get them on table and get some games done. So I'm going to show you guys how I painted the vampire on top now and how I connected the two pieces and what it looks like at the end. So hopefully you're excited as I am. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is the Vampire Lord in question, the one that's supposed to be mounted on top of that beautiful new zombie dragon miniature. Originally, when I decided to separate these two pieces, it was because I thought they were both too kind of complicated to try and squeeze into a single video. The video would be super long and it just wouldn't really work. Well, when I first started to research this guy for part 2, painting this guy, I thought he was a lot more complicated than he is. He's actually quite a simplistic looking miniature. And I will talk through the entire process and show you why I think that and how easy he is to actually paint. First of all, we sprayed him black and then a light gray over the top to give him the kind of perfect base coat for contrast. It is a staple of 99% of the kind of paint jobs that we do. I think it works great, so I'm going to stick with it. When that was applied, I was going to stick with the vampire's armor first to make sure I figured out where all of that was, kind of separate the model from his saddle, which obviously is sat in for this piece. And I used Blood Angel's red contrast for that. I changed the shield a little bit. Obviously, this is the big, beautiful vampiric shield he has in his hand. And it's supposed to be black and gold, but I'm going to include the red color from the armor on that as well. If you wish to do it more like exactly like the box art, then at this stage here, Black Templar contrast, throw that over the top of the shield. And then when you get to layering the black cloak later on, use the same color to layer up the shield if you so wish. I think it looks better in red. Red and gold just looks so good. But yeah, Black Templar contrast on his big, beautiful, flowing vampiric cape. It's such a cool... It's literally like Batman's cape, I swear to God. With those two bits in place, it's time to start working on the metallics, which is kind of where the model became infinitely easier to paint because I thought his saddle was super complicated, but it's not. It's just metallics. In fact, they go for 90% silver when they paint theirs. I decided to push out a little bit more kind of towards the opulence and the gold and stuff that I think a Vampire Lord would have. So I did like the bottom half in silver, but then like where it stops and becomes this like molded vampiric batwing around the like bowl of blood that's swirling in front of him, I decided to do all that in gold. The back struts that come up past his kind of cushioned back piece go silver until they get to the dragon motif parts, and then I did those in gold as well. Of course, when I did the shield, I did the entire shield in red because red works as a perfect base coat for gold. So I wasn't trying to be careful going around the edges and the trim and stuff like that. I just got to go with the gold now, tidy it all up, and get a really nice solid coat on that. Skeleton Horde was then brought in for the vampire's skin. Obviously, I'm going to go for the like pallid, dead looking face. So Skeleton Horde for the base coat. Don't worry, we're going to layer it up later on, add a little tiny bit of warmth to it. So don't have to worry too much about that. You can see the quantity of gold that I added is quite a bit different to what they wanted to do. I decided then to null and oil the entire piece, head to toe, top of spear to the bottom of his foot, null and oil, darken everything down. Works great for all those metallics, both the gold and the silver. The red armor looks great with it. Its cape is obviously going to work really well, and he's going to darken down that face perfectly to begin the layering process. Like I said at the beginning, the primary focus for me is the vampire armor, that red armor. If you get that right whilst painting this guy, then the model is going to look fantastic. So I'm going to go through a simple 3-step highlight with this guy. We're going to go Mephiston red, Evil Sun scarlet, Wild Rider red. Those are the 3 reds we are going to kind of coax our way through, getting lighter and lighter and less with each stage, just highlighting smaller areas until the armor really does pop and give that awesome kind of vampiric feel at the end. So this is the Mephiston red. And as you can see, I've got a big kind of messed up brush, not being too careful. It's kind of the next 2 stages that we need to be super careful with. But I am following around, trying to leave all of the shadow and shade in the recesses and just go for the kind of larger, flatter panels across the model to become that nice bright red. Same with the shield. We're going to try and leave recesses around all of the kind of gold detail, and then go for that kind of scratchy highlight on the red with the Mephiston. Obviously getting lighter and lighter, it'll get more and more scratchy, trying to add as much texture. Because although vampire armor and equipment and swords would be made by the most perfect hands, they would be artisans would create vampiric armor and vampiric weapons. But the armor and weapons might have been made thousands of years ago. So although they are made to the highest standards, they're still going to be nicked and chipped and broken and worn and verdigreed. And at least in my head they are. So I'm going to play that in a little bit and try and give that like kind of more, like I said, textured effect to the armor. And then we're going to add some oxidization to the metallics and stuff later on to help blend that in. So you can see I am just working with the kind of point of the brush, following around and like almost stabbing the paint onto the model to add that like texture. We're not going for like crazy smooth brush strokes with it. And it does really work a treat for adding that texture. And we go to Wild Rider, we're going to be much more, I don't know, reserved with it. As you can see, I've got a really fine pointed brush and I'm really taking my time, just leaving behind the smallest amount of that on the edges and on some of the kind of flatter areas. Nothing too crazy. But it does help to make that red armor pop. You can see there from the knee to the foot looks great. And then from the knee upwards, obviously it's still the mid-tone. You can see the huge difference that it actually does make across that armor. And of course with the shield, once again, you can see fine pointed brush moving very slowly. Same technique as before, but just a lot lighter. I'm trying to leave behind a smaller amount of that orange paint, but creating what I think is a really nice texture across the armor. And giving me the kind of result that was in my head. I briefly toyed around with the idea of adding a gloss varnish that had to make it look like blood red armor. I'm glad I decided not to, but I think it could work. It could look really cool. Corvus Black was then used to highlight the cape. We're not going to go crazy with the cape. It's a vampiric black cape. If you want to make it go crazy, like later on, you could add some like weathering pigment on the ends or in all the crevices and the recesses or whatever. That's up to you. I'm going to go fairly simple. Like I said, I want the dragon armor to be the main focus of this piece. When you look down at the tabletop, you're going to see the dragon and this beacon of red is going to be mounted on top of him. And that's what I want people to see. But earlier, like I said, if you want the shield to be black, Corvus Black is what you will use. And you'll highlight up the shield instead of with the reds. Back to Lead Belcher for layering up all of those metallics, those beautiful silvers, leaving behind the nice Nuln Oil shade in all the recesses. I did debate on adding more gold trim into the vampiric armor. His big shoulder plates or those big knee guards with the sweeping wings could have been gold. And if you think there's a little bit too much red and you want to break it up even more, you can of course go in and swap out some of those armor panels with the gold. And then just go through the same steps as I'm doing here to layer those up. It was genuinely another thing where I stopped and thought about for a minute or two, but it's the kind of Bram Stoker vampire look that I wanted to go for, that original like Dracula armor, which I just think looks really cool. It's so iconic and I just wanted to play into that a little bit. But each to their own, you can do what you like. The Liberator Gold obviously being used to layer and highlight all of those beautiful gold sections. The shield really is coming together nicely. It's a real standout piece of this guy. It's like a huge big tower shield. Like a normal man miniature, this would be head to toe his entire size. So it's fairly cool and does demonstrate the strength of a vampire to casually hold a shield of this size up whilst mounted and holding a lance in the other hand. Okay, Rakarth flesh was used for a quick kind of layering job on the face. As you can see, I'm following those sharp contours, the cheekbones, back to those pointy ears, and then obviously I always struggle a little bit with the bald heads, but we're going to go for one coat of that. Then we are going to go in with the Berserker Bloodshade. This is then put onto the wet palette and from the wet palette down onto the model, so it is slightly thinned. And we're going to give the skin a slight coat with this. Add a little bit of warmth, a little bit of that like red tinging around his mouth and in his eyes. It's not going to do anything bad to the model. Just adds that kind of weathered, old-aged, vampiric look. And then once again, we're going to go straight back to Rakarth flesh and go for a final very light highlight. Just going for, touch of the nose, little tips of the ear, a little bit cheeks, and then a few kind of streaks along his bald head. Add a little bit of texture will give us a beautiful vampiric face. Nilic Oxide is then introduced for that Vhordrai I talked about earlier. This saddle may have been forged for this guy hundreds of years ago. Therefore, it's going to be pretty hard to maintain to perfection. So it's going to have a little bit of wear and tear, a little bit of rust, and Vhordrai will go a long way, adding that splash of blue into this otherwise red and metallic kind of sections. Playing around in the shield as well. Probably wouldn't really settle in the recesses where the shield is, but I just wanted to add that color to these parts. So I didn't overly think about it. I just kind of went in for it, and I think it looked good in the end. Obviously, all the chips and dents and stuff in the shield is anywhere where water would pool would cause a little bit of oxidization, so we did that. For the vampire's eyes, all I did was grab a pure white and paint his eyeballs with that. And then all I did was grab a nice bright yellow color. So I went for Iandin yellow contrast, and I painted that into his eyes to give him that kind of glowing yellow eyes. You can make it be glowing anything. Same thing, just put that white dot on. You want it to be green, grab Warpstone Glow. You want it to be blue, grab whatever blue contrast you like to make it shiny blue. It's up to you if you want to do that. I went for yellow. Now, someone asked me in comments if this guy was magnetizable, and I said to them in the comments that I would show this specific section off. So as you can see, the underneath the saddle is hollow. There's a little point on the metal bit at the bottom of the saddle which shows that that lines up to a point on the dragon's neck there. And then it slips over all of the horns on his back. And then when you put a little bit of pressure, he does actually stick in place. So for the purpose of transportation, you don't even need magnets really. It's only when you're putting the kind of shield and the reins on that it might be a bit of a pain. I don't know how you would glue the shield on, then remove the model and try and store that with the reins coming down with that would be a bit of a nightmare. But it is possible. Here is the finished result. My Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon mounted. He is permanently glued there. I'm not planning on running him as anything other than what he is. So he is permanently there. I'm super pleased to have the model finished. Obviously, it was quite a lot of work. It's a big piece, big complicated piece. But I do love it very much. Here's some still images to give you guys an example of what he will look like on a tabletop. The lots of red armor off the Vampire Lord I think looks great. The shield is just, for me, it's the most beautiful part of the vampire anyway. I love it to death. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, do all that usual thing, like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.